Hi guys, I wanted to share my design process and talk about some of my choices in this medieval Ishgard build. So first, I wanted to share my mood board with you and show you some of the things that inspired this build. This was the first image I found and I really loved the layout here, especially with the balcony and how it overlooks the main hall. I also loved the stonework and how there was exposed plaster with beams leading up to the ceiling. Of course, there's the heavy wooden plank door and the iron door knocker to match. The windows were a huge part of this build, and I really wanted to do this arched window seat look, but with diamond LED light work instead. Anything floral I wanted to keep quite dark, and the general colors I used in the build are cobalt brown, mole brown, this cool tone cerulean blue as an accent, and all my windows are cream yellow. Now that we've seen the mood board, let's talk about this couch. My friend Fel made the original design for this one, and I'll include her breakdown in the description below. It's made of 3 pudding settees that make up the main seat of the couch, and the frame is made with an Order of Nordthal lectern. It's a little chunky, so it can be difficult to hide behind a wall if you don't have too much space back there. The back though I changed just a little bit. I wanted something a little bit more rustic for my space, so I used an Ironman cupboard, floated it from the floor below to get this nice arch and a bit of a lattice effect. Off to the side, I have just a little bit of clutter with this wine barrel, a brass pricket, and tucked into the wall just a little bit is a war chest. Now, the windows and the doors are some of my favorite parts of this build. I'm not going to cover them in this video though, because I do have 2 full tutorials on how to make them, and I'll pop them also in the description. On the other side of the door, I wanted to do a little desk area, and this is with the walnut dining table. It was a little bit too perfect though, so on one side I added a walnut carnier, and the other I added a shipping crate to kind of look like it had a broken leg and had been propped up a little bit. Underneath I hid the table equestrian. The colors didn't really vibe with this, but I still wanted it accessible by the owner. The message book I did in a similar way. So I didn't love the color of this one, but I really loved the quill. So with the classified documents, it kind of looks like it goes together, and an open book so it still has that message book feel. Above is kind of like a hunt board with these Adventurers Guild posters and an Eorzean map. Along the wall, I used cheese collections for the border, but in this corner I had a little gap. The owner was a dragoon at the time, and so I kind of thought this armament showcase would be a fun way to display some lances and kind of fill the space instead of using an extra cheese collection. I wanted this area to feel really warm and inviting, so I made this hearth. It has a lot of laid items like these mana fireplaces that act as a tabletop surface, and a completely optional you could see it would work without as well. They're sitting on top of 2 merchant shelves that are floated from the floor below. And tucked into one of these merchant shelves I have the Crystarium kitchen hanger. Now the masonwork stove here is at its minimum float height, and you can see that it also hides the crests from the mana fireplace. Behind it, or layered inside it, is the mana counter. I really like the brick texture here, but again, it's optional. If you prefer the slanted wall in the back, you could do that too. Above for the mantle is the mana cupboard. I've used this item quite a lot. I like the way it sticks out a little bit, so it's quite easy to hide the rest of the item. And above that, to kind of look like a chimney, there's 2 mason work stoves. On top of the mantle are some botanist dried herbs and assorted candles. Here's some extra items from the space that don't require any glitching at all. Okay, the stairs. These were quite a challenge. I really wanted them to feel like this big, large, grand wraparound staircase that leads up to the balcony. And they probably took me the most amount of time in this build. The main part of the treads are made up with cheese collections. I really liked the rustic texture on these, and also they tie in with the trim that I use on the lower part of the walls. Because of the angle of the stairs, I had to use 2 cheese collections per stair for most of the way up. But if I swing the camera around the corner, you can actually see I had to use hinged cupboards for the top 2 stairs, and this is because the cheese collections were snapping to the floor above. As you wind up around the top of the stairs, I really wanted this to feel kind of like a tower in a castle, so I made this smaller little window in the corner. To frame it, I used blank Riviera petitions with the masonwork interior wall, and of course, I had to get those black old roses in there as well. On the edge, I have an ivy pillar, and the bottom trim is the masonwork stoves which continue on from the main floor. At the top of the stairs, I added another door for visual interest, and the floor itself is made with flooring mats. These guys are also at minimum height. And from this angle, you can see the baseboards are made with the tops of glade petitions. For the walls in this area, I used blank glade petitions. I really liked the side on these and how they act as a natural frame instead of the way the Riviera petitions look. The main part of the bench is made with more cheese collections, and hidden inside is a hinged bench, making it a great spot to sit and read a book, or have a cup of tea, or something a little more medieval. To create this half wall at the front of the balcony, I used more masonwork stoves, and the balustrade is made with wooden handrails that are sunk down just a little bit. Now, I know I said I wasn't going to talk about the windows in this build, but I just wanted to mention that this one was a little tricky, only because I'm right up against the back wall here. This masonwork stove that I used for the top of the window, and also the glade cupboards that I used for the arches, all 4 of them are placed using the storage glitch in order to get them close to the wall. It's also why you can see the white rectangular petitions are on a slight angle here. If I were to do this again, I'd use the wood slat petitions, but they unfortunately weren't in game at the time. While we're up here on the balcony, let's talk about the ceiling. So the owner is a max height male Alra, and he wanted to have as much head height as possible. So I decided to make the ceiling a little bit more rustic and floated cask racks as high as they could go while still keeping the natural goblet beams. I really like the way the beams match the wood tone on the slanted walls, which I also kept undyed for that natural plaster look. The cask racks I carried the whole way throughout the main floor, the stairwell, and the balcony. So I also wanted to show you what a difference lighting can make as well. Originally, I wanted to use the Alpine chandelier. I really love the Ishgard medieval styling it has, but unfortunately it put out a really red glow, so I decided to keep the wooden chandelier instead. And last but not least is the bedroom. The entrance is framed with some cask racks and a simple curtain, and there's a small light above with the alchemical lantern and a stuffed marlin. I really love the rope detail on this, and I use this quite a lot. This was the last room of the build I did, and I was definitely starting to feel the slot limit here, so unfortunately I couldn't continue the cask racks in here. The bottom of the window is the imposing Ishgard shelf, which you can't see from this angle, and the curtain that covers it is the swag balance. Around the window I used the cask racks to frame it to tie back in with the cask racks used in the main area, since I couldn't do them on the roof. To help it feel just a little lived in, there's still some clutter around, like this spirits collection, pile of tomes, dragon piece, and glass jars. For the bookcase, I floated this portable step ladder. You could also leave it on the ground as a shorter version, but I like to play with some heights. And on top is a Riviera lantern. And on top of the bookcase are some hunting supplies. The bed is a glade bed, and I used some extra books and papers to scatter around the footboard. While the headboard, I used 3 knight captain's chairs spun around backwards to make it feel just a little bit more grand. So that's it for this build. I hope you enjoyed my ramblings, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below. Happy building!